The White House had this warning for Vladimir Putin as sham referendums are being held in Ukrainian, Russian-held territory. Tread carefully. 4 Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine are voting today to join Russia, a move that President Biden says is just a pretext for Moscow to try and annex those territories. Meantime, Putin initiated a mobilization of reservists, sparking protests across Russia. And again, he threatened Ukraine with nuclear weapons. Let's discuss now with retired Army Brigadier General Mark Kimmett. Good morning, General. We're always grateful to have your expertise and insight. I first wanted to get your reaction to the news this week that a panel appointed by the United Nations of independent legal experts revealed that Russian soldiers raped and tortured kids as young as 4 years old. What did you think when you heard that?
Well, sadly, I said this is just part of the Russian playbook. They've been doing this ever since the First World War. They understand war not simply to be battle between soldiers, battle for taking grounds, but also to inflict terror in the heart of the populations that they're attacking. It was said in World War II that in Berlin at the end of the war, every woman between the age of 7 and 70 were expected to be raped, and they fulfilled that promise.
Wow, that is awful to contemplate. General, I wanted to ask you about the threat of the use of nuclear weapons by the Kremlin. I recently spoke to a national security expert on Capitol Hill that explained Putin's desperation and the escalating threats in this way. Every step forward for Ukraine is one step closer to a nuclear disaster. What options does the West have to prevent that?
Well, probably the most important option is to stand firm, stand resolved, and send a clear message to Vladimir Putin, as John F. Kennedy did during the Cuban Missile Crisis, is that we will not stand down, that we will stand firm, and that any use of tactical nuclear weapons will be met with a quid quo response that he and his people cannot undertake and will suffer underneath it.
Between those threats and Putin calling up those 300,000 reservists to join the fight in Ukraine, what does it tell you about the current expectation from the Kremlin? It seems like these are desperate moves.
Well, I think some would say that, but I see this as a sign of resolve on the part of Vladimir Putin to keep this fight going for as long as he sees as necessary. Now, that may be a bluff, that may be a diplomatic move, but it certainly does not seem to me that this would show that Russia wants to end this war anytime soon because they're losing ground, losing troops, or in any sign of desperation. In my mind, he is doubling down.
And those 300,000 reservists, do you expect that that level of manpower might reverse the recent gains from the Ukrainian counteroffensive?
Well, I think we're going to see too much happen between now and the time that the reservists can actually be put to use on the battlefield. You have to recruit them, you have to bring them in, you have to retrain them, you have to get them to the battlefield. So I don't expect that they will have any kind of consequence on the battlefield till early spring.
There was also some CNN reporting in recent days that apparently Vladimir Putin himself is giving directions directly to Russian generals in the battlefield. It made you laugh.
Well, first of all, politicians and presidents are pretty lousy at giving orders and understanding military. We saw that with Hitler during World War II, but we also saw that with President Johnson during the bombing campaign of North Vietnam in the late 60s. I can't think in modern history where we had a situation where a leader of a country directing the individual soldiers on the ground has ended up better than worse.
Yeah, and notably, there were some intelligence intercepts that revealed that some of the soldiers on the ground were lamenting the directions from Moscow. They were complaining. What did you make of that?
Well, two things. I also don't know a soldier in war who hasn't bitched about his leaders. But the fact remains, if it gets to the point now where the leader is, as we say, using the 1,000-mile screwdriver to try to adjust the war inside Ukraine, It shows two things. Number one, Vladimir Putin has an overestimation of his own abilities, but more importantly, number two, that he has no confidence in his leaders that are getting beat on the ground right now.